Hello, and welcome to Two Profs in a Pod. I'm Tenisha.
I'm Beth.
And we are faculty and faculty developers at Glendale Community College in Arizona. And today we are so excited for our topic. As you know, we are excited for every topic that we do here on Two Profs in a Pod. We are excited because we are going to be talking about AI and some things that we've been learning and doing with it as well. So, like I said, we're excited for it. We're looking forward to talking about it. Beth, could you tell us why we are talking about this today?
Yes, I will talk about why. And I also want to back up just for a moment and say to our longtime listeners, you may have noticed our last few episodes have not followed our traditional template script. So we have veered from that a little bit. We hope that you are enjoying that new format. Some of the topics seem to fit the newer format better, where we talk about, 5 things or 6 things.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for staying with us for that. Okay, so we are talking about AI today because it is another topic we have avoided talking about, partly because it has been quite overwhelming to us, and I know that we are not alone in that. And we needed some time to really probably learn a little bit more to feel comfortable having a conversation. And so Tenisha and I have assigned ourselves homework to be playing with AI as often as we can and to be experimenting with it. And then we figured that, okay, we can probably do an episode and talk about a few things related to AI that maybe other faculty might hear and try, or maybe you will listen and hear this and then you have an idea you could share with us in the comments. So that's what we're doing. And Tenisha gets to go first. We're going to talk about just a few things that we have tried or experimented with out of a long list of things. Okay, Tenisha, give us one.
All right. So one of the things that I've tried with, I've been tinkering with ChatGPT specifically to get a sense of kind of what it is and how it works. I'm not going to lie. I was one of those people who just wanted to put their head in the sand and act like ChatGPT did not exist. All this AI stuff. It was I kind of put it on the back burner because I was like, oh, I'll deal with that later, type of thing. But, it's here, it's in the here and it's in the now, and people are using it. So definitely having this conversation really prompted me to really have to explore. I think if I hadn't explored, if we hadn't started talking about this or discussing, even talking about this topic, I probably would have still had my head in the sand and putting off dealing with ChatGPT until I had a moment to deal with it. But it's one of those things where I feel like we need to have these conversations now. Instead of just ignoring it, because avoiding it and ignoring it can only make it worse. So I finally played around with some ChatGPT, and one of the first things that I did was I actually took my assignments, my assignment criteria, my assignment prompts, and I just copy and pasted it into ChatGPT to kind of see what it would produce. And it was really interesting, some of the things that it produced when it came to the assignment prompts. Like, for example, it helped to kind of generate, for example, one of them was a paper, and it helped to generate kind of like how you could approach the paper, how you could organize the paper, how you could maybe talk about some of the concepts and the ideas, and even give some suggestions for the paper itself. So not actually full out write the paper for them specifically, but actually give them an opportunity to kind of help to just generate some ideas or directions that they could go in. So that's kind of what I noticed for one of the things when it came to the assignment prompts themselves. So I was really trying to see, what is this going to crank out for my students if I did have a student who just did a cut and paste job? And it was interesting because I could see that there was information that actually could be used as a tool and as a guide, but then I can also see someone being able to use it and abusing it, right? Saying, well, this is what is spewed out for me, so I'm just going to copy and paste this into the assignment and then just submit it in that way. So plugging it in that way kind of helped me to see and kind of recognize what it could look like if I do have a student who submits an assignment based off of that, as far as the structure and the formatting of ChatGPT. So it kind of gives me a sense of that, and just kind of a sense of kind of what could be used from it. And it was really interesting what it could do and what it could not do. Like, for example, with this paper, they have to use personal experiences or one of the relationships that's in their lives to explain one of the concepts. And in my mind, I was like, that's a foolproof way. That's like, how is ChatGPT going to, present specific examples? And actually gave like small suggestions that could be used. It didn't provide a lot of detail, but it could help a student to really kind of brainstorm. So I was like, oh, okay. So it's not having those personal experiences in the assignment criteria is not 150% foolproof. So I kind of learned that. I also learned that when it came to the assignment prompts, ChatGPT had a really difficult time being able to provide something to the user if it was connected to like a reading or a video. Like if I'm like, watch this video, identify the concepts, ChatGPT couldn't do it because they don't have access to that video. They don't have access to that reading. So in order to do that, they would need that information, and they couldn't really produce anything because of that. So it just got me thinking about, if this is used as a tool and someone used it for my class, what could they gain from it? What could be used? What could be abused? So after kind of doing that, it gave me an opportunity to kind of see the strengths of the assignments that I've created, and also some areas where my assignments could be improved on, so that students can focus more on critical thinking and application and synthesis and all that fun Bloom's taxonomy type stuff.
I think that's a really good way to play with it.
Yeah.
It's a good starting point, right? And as you said, it got you thinking about your assignment.
It did.
And ways that you could modify it. And it's kind of, it's related a little bit to what one of the ways that I've played with it. And that is, and I did this months ago, and then I've also done it more recently. I knew that I had some super short multiple choice quizzes in my courses that were a little bit more measuring if students either read the material or listened to the lecture versus am I assessing something more related to the course competency. So I've asked, and I think I pretty much used ChatGPT. I might have used Claude, and I might have tried a couple different ones with this. I've asked it to revise the questions. I've pasted my own lecture in and asked it to generate questions. And when I do that, I've used two different kinds of prompts. One prompt I use is, can you generate 2 analysis level on Bloom's taxonomy, questions. I phrase it a little bit better than that, but this is just to give you the idea of the specificity of the prompt. And the other way I've prompted it is just, and this has been more recent, is just to say, can you generate, 2 high level multiple choice questions? And I actually feel like it's done a pretty good job. And those of us who have written multiple choice questions know how challenging it can be to write an analysis level multiple choice question. Like, it really takes a lot of thinking and a lot of time to get that just right. So I felt like this was a huge time saver. And so I had a rough draft question I could look at and say, oh, okay, actually this will work as is, or okay, I'm going to rephrase this a little bit, or I'm going to put a different detractor in, one of the possible responses. But I would say it has, that has helped me a lot.
Okay.
Saving time, and also I think doing something that will help students more. right?
Right.
They're having to think more about the question. So I think it's developing some critical thinking more than just, checking, did you read this page or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Back to you.
Back to me. So another way that I've used it is that I've used it to look up words and concepts that I didn't necessarily know or understand for myself personally. Usually it is, Tanisha will just go to Google and look it up real quick. If I'm not sure what it is or the term or the idea or concept or whatever, but ChatGPT happened to be open when I was trying to figure out, I think it was a word that someone mentioned to me and I wasn't too clear on what it was or what the concept was. So I just submitted it to ChatGPT and ChatGPT was like, here you go. And I was like, oh, that's what that means, which is very useful and very handy. Unfortunately, I don't know where it came from. Like if I had to cite that in a paper, I wouldn't know where to cite it or how to cite it, compared to if I would have done like maybe a Google Scholar search, right? Or some other type of search, like maybe in a library database, right, where it can spew out magazines and articles, and I'd be able to cite that. ChatGPT didn't give me a specific source. I mean, I guess I would have to cite ChatGPT as the source, but I guess me being a little bit old school traditional, I really want like tangible, credible sources that I can pull from, if that makes any sense. And maybe that's just the old school traditionalist in me when it comes to finding information. But it is helpful if you want to look up something real quick, right? Like, I don't know, I'm just at the top of my head, I'm thinking about something random, like if you don't know what a quinceañera is, like, which is a coming of age celebration for young women in Mexican cultures. Like if you got invited to a quinceañera and you're like, I have no idea what that is, you could look it up in ChatGPT and get a sense of what that is and what it means. But you wouldn't necessarily know what source it came from or where it came from. So that's the only, to me, downside, especially if I'm writing an academic paper on it, then that wouldn't necessarily be helpful for me. But I think for casual use, if I'm like, hey, what does that mean? What is this word? What is this concept? Then I can just use it for ChatGPT to be helpful for me. But I also think my future self down the line, if there are new concepts and theories that come out that I'm not familiar with because it hasn't come across my radar before, then I can definitely use it in that sense. And then maybe that can be a launching pad for additional research and other things that I'm curious about, if that makes any sense. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's like, oh, I didn't know this about quinceañeras. I want to learn it a little bit more. I'm going to go dig a little bit deeper in our GCC library and see if I can find more information because ChatGPT has sparked my interest. I'm going to jump over here and see if I can find out more. So I can kind of see how it can be useful in that sense.
Yeah. I think that's another way I've heard other people using it, just in terms of like launching pad for something, a starting point for something.
Right.
Another thing that we did, and Tanisha and I actually did this one together. So I do have ChatGPT 4. So I have a subscription to that. And not too long ago, they launched GPTs that can be made that are specific to whatever kind of task you're asking ChatGPT to do for you, or whatever you want this new GPT to do. So one of the goals that Tanisha and I have is to make sure that we have transcripts for all of our episodes. And if any of our audience could not tell or did not know, we don't spend a lot of money on producing this show. We do this because we enjoy doing it, and when we can fit it into our schedule, and it's not part of our, it's just not part of our regular everyday job.
Yeah, it's not a part of like our day to day. This is,
right.
Just a.
So okay, well, it is part of our job, but if we didn't produce an episode for a while, and if you've been listening for a while, you know what I'm talking about, because sometimes we have missed a little time. It's okay. right? Like we do these at our own schedule. Okay, you get the point. So in terms of getting transcripts, that's a whole lot more of man hours and or money that we don't really have.
Right.
So it's been challenging for us. So anyway, that is one of our goals. So we experimented and we created a GPT that would take a just giant paragraph transcript and it would distinguish between the speakers.
Yep.
It would identify Beth. It would identify Tenisha. We gave it all these rules. It would correct the transcript so that it had capital letters and periods. And so we've been playing with that and have been mostly satisfied. Although I do have to say, the longer we talk, so the longer the transcript is, the GPT will, I don't know how long goes by. Maybe like a minute and a half or 2 minutes of transcript, and it just sort of stops.
Yeah.
And then, we can continue prompting it. Sometimes a little button appears that says something like continue generating. And so we push that. Other times I have to say, remember what your task is. Can you please do this with the entire transcript?
Right.
And then it'll say, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let me, give you the rest of it. And sometimes sometimes I just paste it in 2 sections.
Yeah.
So it's not quite there yet, but I will say that Tenisha and I are very hopeful that we can make this our project for the next, 15 months or so. That sounds like a long time. And we'll have really good transcripts for all the episodes that we've done.
Right.
And we're starting with our most recent episodes and going backwards. So we're definitely using AI to help us with that as much as possible.
Right. And I think it's really exciting because just one of the things that I've just learned just from playing around with ChatGPT and what we've discussed today and some of the things that I've read is the opportunity for AI to help to alleviate some of the task that we have to do, whether it's in our personal life or our professional life. So things that really take up quite a bit of time, to where if we had a tool that can help us to complete these tasks, it actually frees us up to do other things, right? Like instead of, like, for example, Beth, you talked about the multiple choice quiz questions. So instead of just sitting there like for, I'm just going to say 2 hours trying to put a quiz together, maybe this will help you to put together a quiz for 30 minutes. And then you have an hour and a half to focus on doing something like maybe lesson planning, right? Or prepping your lesson for the year, or putting together your lectures or putting together assignments. It gives you an opportunity to do more because you have a tool that can help you in this other area as well. It kind of frees up your time so you can do more. Which I think is really cool, which can help with the transcripts for the show, right? If we have something that's helping with the transcripts for the show, we don't have to sit there and try to listen and type it out at the same time. Hopefully we have something that can help us with that. And then we can maybe have more time to focus and brainstorm on, brainstorming topics for the show. And we're not, caught up in having to do the transcripts, because now we have a little bit more freedom and flexibility to kind of maybe explore different areas or reinforce some of the areas that we work in.
And if you're listening and you're thinking, oh, why aren't you doing X, Y, and Z for that? Maybe put it in the comments, because we probably don't know about it.
Yeah. Please let us know, because this is,
I mean, we know the ones you can pay for.
Yeah.
And we don't have really the budget to do that.
Yeah. So any help would be appreciated. So leave something in the comment section, please. That would be.
Point out the easy way that we have somehow gone around.
Yeah, maybe So that is something that I think is really interesting about AI, is just the tool and being able to be freed up from one task so that you can invest that time somewhere else.
All right, back to you.
Back to me. I think another thing that I've kind of played around with is really seeing how like, for example, Chat GPT explains things. Like, for example, there are some concepts in, like, for example, the textbook, where I feel like the textbook doesn't necessarily do a good job of really explaining the concept, or I find it to be really difficult to kind of really convey that idea to my students. So sometimes I'm thinking, well, how would Chat GPT talk about this subject? And I'll put it in, and it's like, that's a good way to talk about that. Like, that's actually a lot. That is actually a lot more clear than what the textbook explained. And it's like, oh, okay, that could be another way to approach it, or maybe define it or describe it in a way that helps it to make more sense for my students. Because some things are pretty complex. Concepts are kind of difficult for my students to wrap their brain around. Like, I think specifically of like perception and the perception process and the steps involved with it, what each step means. It can be a little bit difficult to kind of wrap people's brains around this whole concept and idea of perception. So if I was to put that in Chat GPT, how would they be able to explain the first step, which is selection? How do I explain it? How does the textbook explain it? How does Chat GPT explain it? And how can I explain it in a way that it makes sense to my students? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of another way that I feel like I've used it as well, is to be like, how, because people explain different things in different ways. And it's like you have 3 different voices. You have the author of the textbook, you have me as an instructor, and then you have Chat GPT itself. So
yeah, that's such a good idea. And I did make another GPT. Mm-hmm. And I was experimenting and thinking, it'd be great if I could make a GPT that my students could access to ask questions. And I'm just going to try making one that's like the Gothic Lit professor. Mm. And it was great until I realized they couldn't access it if they didn't have Chat GPT 4. So,
oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
But same kind of concept, right? Like,
yeah.
Something that they could access anytime they had a question. I mean, even though I feel like I'm accessible and they could ask me the question too.
Right.
Just playing around. That wasn't my last item though. That was a bonus.
Yeah, that was extra.
My last item it's a little bit more general, but it's basically so you talked about using AI as like a launching pad for various things. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of similar to that, but it's using it for creative ideas, which, if you're in a room brainstorming with people and you've got some time, you could probably eventually get to a cool idea for theming a conference or theming a workshop or a series of workshops or whatever. And of course, those are examples that I've now done with my colleagues using Chat GPT. Mm-hmm. And so it just goes faster, right?
Yeah.
And it's also super fun.
Yeah.
We've asked it to write a spooky themed workshop description that we were having in the month of October. Mm-hmm. And then we used that, or we used a couple sentences of it, in the description. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And I think in that creative process, it's almost like, it is sort of like having another, I was going to say person, but it's not a person, but it is like having, another, like you said, voice. It's like having another voice in the room that's part of that.
Yeah.
And so, usually I'm brainstorming with Megan, the co-director here, or, another member of the team, Polly, and we'll say, oh, let's ask it this, or let's ask it for some synonyms for this word, or let's ask it, we have a conference coming up that is themed. We have a Disco Inferno theme for a conference coming up. So we're like, okay, what are words that, are related to a Disco Inferno? We get a list.
Yeah.
And then we can use those words when we ask folks to write up descriptions of their presentations so that they can theme those related to the conference. Mm-hmm. So we're getting a lot of creative jump starts, I think, from it so far. And I think, Tenisha, if we did this same episode a year from now, obviously this would be totally different, right?
Yeah.
We'd be playing with it like AI is going to be so different probably and change that. Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Because it's still so new. Like, I mean, AI in general is not super new, but with the introduction of ChatGPT, like things have kind of been shaken up just a little bit, which is not a bad thing. But I think we're still learning and trying to navigate our way with something that's still really, really new to us. And I think it's definitely going to change within a year. I feel like in the next 2 weeks, honestly.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So what is on your radar, Tenisha?
One of the things that's on my radar, I think at the last episode I mentioned that I was going to do training to be an Olympic weightlifting coach, to be a level 1 Olympic weightlifting coach.
You did.
And I went through the training and I passed. So I am officially a level 1 Olympic weightlifting coach. So I am adding that to my CrossFit level 1 coaching as well. So I've just added that to my bucket. So if you want to sit around and have conversations about Olympic weightlifting or CrossFit, I'm definitely the person to talk to about that. So it was really cool. The training, the Olympic weightlifting training, it was 2 days, and it was in person Saturday and Sunday, and then I had 7 days to take the online exam. And then after you take the exam, then they let you know if you passed or not, and they send you a certificate. So I passed.
Nice.
So it was really cool. So I was
Nice.
super excited. So I'm your
Congratulations.
CrossFit and weightlifting professor.
Nice.
So, yep, that's what's on my radar. So super excited for that.
Okay. What's on my radar is right now, 'tis the season that my spouse and I watch Christmas movies probably daily.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not really daily, but several evenings of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And we, of course, must analyze and critique them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a lot of fun. Kind of gets us in a holiday mood and also allows us to exercise some brain muscles. And we have some great conversations about it. And so I think looking forward to the next couple of weeks and continuing to do that is something that I'm very much looking forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have a nugget for today?
Yeah. Nuggets. Y'all know I love me some nuggets on this podcast and in real life.
I think I would say, you and I have both made a little bit of time to play around.
Yeah.
Low stakes, let's just jump in and try a few things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we might convert that into a nugget of, there's no absolute right way to start or, it's taking a step.
Yeah.
And then just keeping walking.
Yeah.
With AI. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep playing with it weekly.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that this is definitely the opportunity and the time to really just play around and kind of see what's out there. Some people are just automatically anti-AI. Like, I don't care. But honestly, I was like, you can't knock it until you try it. If you try it and you're like, it's not for me, okay, at least you tried it. But if you knock it, if you knock it and you try it, you tried it. But if you knock it and you haven't tried it, it's really difficult to really support your position and not supporting AI if you haven't actually played around a little bit with it or tinkered with it. So I say don't knock it till you try it and see if it's something that works for you, and you come to your own conclusion about how you feel about some of the AI that is out there right now, and kind of seeing how it could be used when it comes to whatever you feel like you might need for AI, or how you think the people, like maybe students, would also use it as well. So I say just do your own digging and investigate and see for yourself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if you have enjoyed listening to this conversation and want to join in, leave a comment on our blog at twoprofsinapod.blogspot.com. Remember to spell out the number 2. Other ways to show your support: subscribe in your favorite podcast app, write a review on Apple Podcasts, or tell your colleagues about the show. Two Profs in a Pod is hosted by Beth Ayers, English faculty, and Tenisha Baca, communication faculty. The show is brought to you by the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Engagement at Glendale Community College in Arizona.